Welcome to Hart County Public Library Outreach Virtual Storytime. We are so glad that you could join us.
I am excited to share the book The Iris's Secret because it's written by local author Virginia Davis and it's illustrated by Jane Curray. Hannah tried hard not to cry as she placed her beautiful teapot and 4 tiny cups into the tin box. "I will be brave," she thought. Very carefully, she carried the box out to her mother's flower garden, where she often played, and buried it deep in the ground next to a small clump of purple irises. "It will be our secret," she whispered to the irises. "Keep my tea set safe for me until I return." Hannah didn't want to leave her home in Kentucky, but her father wanted to buy new land out west, so 7-year-old Hannah had decided to do what her grandfather had once done. "If you leave something behind that you love, then you will be sure to go back for it someday," he had said. What Hannah loved most was her beautiful tea set. She had played with it every day since receiving it as a gift from her favorite uncle. "I will come back for you someday," Hannah said as she gently patted the ground where her tea set now lay buried. "Come on, Hannah, it's time to go," her parents called from the wagon. Hannah took one last look at the flower garden before running to join them. As the wagon slowly pulled away, Hannah blinked back her tears. "Oh, I hope I haven't made a mistake," she mumbled to herself as she watched the irises gradually disappear from sight. Finally, she could stand it no longer. Hannah leaned back against a soft pile of quilts in the wagon and let the tears roll down her face. Back in the garden, the irises watched in silence as the wagon drove away. Where was Hannah going? And why had she buried her tea set in the ground? The irises didn't understand why Hannah was leaving, yet they clearly understood what she wanted them to do. "Keep my tea set safe until I return," she had said. "It's our secret." Year after year, the irises sadly waited for Hannah to return. Eventually, other families came to live in the house where she had once lived, but no one had discovered their secret. Then one day, a young mother and her 6-year-old daughter named Katie moved into the house. Katie loved sliding down the banister in the old house, just like Hannah had done. She loved playing in the big backyard surrounded by tall maple trees where Hannah had spent long hours, and she loved the purple irises that filled the garden. Katie often played in the garden near the flowers. The irises enjoyed listening to Katie's soft voice as she sang to her dolls. Hannah had played in the garden with her dolls too, and of course, with the beautiful teapot and 4 tiny cups. As the months went by, the irises grew to love Katie and wanted to do something special for her. "I know," said one of the irises. "Let's tell her about Hannah's tea set." "Oh, no, we can't do that," protested another iris. "It's a secret. You aren't supposed to tell secrets." "But Hannah's never coming back," argued the first one. "Why don't you let Bearded Iris decide what should be done?" suggested the very youngest iris. Everyone respected Bearded Iris. He was the oldest flower in the garden and very wise. "Hannah lived here a long time ago. All of the irises that once knew her are gone, but others have taken their place," he said. "And through the years, we have been the guardians of Hannah's tea set." The old flower looked at all the new clumps of irises. "Listen carefully," he told them. for I have discovered something that all of you should know." Bearded Iris told the other flowers his news. When he was finished, all of the irises fluttered their petals in delight. "This is wonderful!" they exclaimed. "So you see, my little irises," he said, "in this case, I think Hannah would want Katy to have the tea set." All of the other flowers agreed. But this posed another problem for the irises. How were they going to tell Katy? "She won't understand our language," sighed one of the irises. "I know," offered the youngest iris again. "Let's ask our friends to help." And so they did. "I'll go first," volunteered their friend, Mr. Wind. "The irises have a secret for you," he whispered, blowing gently through Katy's hair. Katy brushed the hair out of her eyes. Did someone say something? But Mr. Wind had already blown away. "We want to try next," chirped a pair of robins. "The irises have a secret for you," they sang from their nest way up high in the maple tree. Katy looked up. Did someone say something? But their chicks began to cry, and the robins did not hear her. "We'll tell her," offered a colony of little black ants. "The irises have a secret for you. The irises have a secret for you," they repeated one after another as they marched in a straight line through the garden. Katy stopped playing and looked around. Did someone say something? But the ants were already deep inside their sandy ant hill. Miss Bumblebee, busily darting from one flower to another, overheard the ants and buzzed over to help. "The irises have a secret for you," she hummed over and over again as she flew around Katy's head. Katy nervously watched the bees circling her. "Are you trying to tell me something?" But Miss Bumblebee suddenly caught whiff of a sweet-smelling flower and buzzed away. Mrs. Field Mouse was watching from a distance. "It's my turn," she insisted. She scurried over to Katy and squeaked. "The irises have a secret for you. The irises have a secret for you." "Oh, my!" squealed Katy when she saw the mouse. "Are you trying to tell me something, too?" But Mrs. Field Mouse spotted a corn snake slithering her way and hurried out of sight. The flowers watched sadly as their friends, one after another, tried to tell Katy about their secret. "She doesn't understand," mumbled the youngest iris. All the flowers turned to Bearded Iris. "There still might be a way," he said as he spotted Sparky, the neighbor's dog, nearby. Sparky wagged his tail in excitement as Bearded Iris explained his plan. When Katy saw Sparky by the irises, she ran over to pet him. She liked the old white dog. Sparky jumped up to greet Katy and gave her a big lick on the face. Then he started to dig. "What are you digging for, Sparky?" Katy asked. "Did you bury a bone here?" Sparky just kept digging. Katy watched as the hole got bigger and bigger. Finally, he stopped. When Katy looked down into the hole, she saw a square box and ran quickly to get her mother. "Look," Katy said as her mother knelt down beside the hole. "What is it, Mommy?" Katy watched as her mother lifted out a tin box. Katy's mother could tell the box was very old. She opened the lid slowly. "Oh, how beautiful," she said when she looked inside. Katy could hardly believe her eyes when she saw the little teapot and 4 tiny cups. Who do they belong to? She asked her mother. There are some initials on the inside of this box, her mother replied. H.M.B. I wonder who that could be. Her mother thought for a moment and then said excitedly, Hannah Marie Blackford, Katie, this tea set belonged to your great-great-grandmother Hannah. Is she still alive? Katie asked. Oh, no, her mother replied. She lived here a long, long time ago. Then her mother continued, When I was a little girl, I remember my grandmother telling me a story about a tea set that her mother had once owned. I had forgotten about the story until now. Why did she bury it? Asked Katie. Well, your great-great-grandmother Hannah had planned to return for the tea set one day, said her mother. As Katie looked down at it, she suddenly felt very sad. I guess she never got to, did she, Mommy? Her mother slowly shook her head. No, but she never forgot about the tea set and hoped someone might return for it one day. Like us? Katie exclaimed. Then she looked around at all the irises. It was the irises' secret, wasn't it, Mommy? Katie asked. Yes, it was, her mother replied, for a very long time. I'm glad we discovered their secret, Katie said as she carefully carried the tin box with the beautiful teapot and 4 tiny cups into the house. Me too, answered Mother. We are too, whispered the irises and all of their friends. As a follow-up to this book, I have a very special guest joining me today, Miss Virginia Davis, our local artist. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Linda, for inviting me to be here.
So Virginia, your first book was The Iris's Secret. What was your inspiration for that book?
Well, I don't know whether children still enjoy making mud pies, but I sure did when I was a little girl. And there was an area of our yard that was perfect for making mud pies. The dirt was there, and it was actually located beside a clump of purple irises. And one day I was just digging in the dirt, and I heard something, kind of clink when I hit it with I must have been using a spoon or something. And so that motivated me to dig a little deeper. And before I knew it, I had uncovered some little teacups and a little teapot. And it certainly what didn't belong to me, wasn't my sister's. And so that was a mystery to me. And I think years later, when I became interested in trying to write, that idea came back. And so I thought I'd write a story just imagining how those teacups and teapot was actually buried in the ground.
Wow. So about how long did it take you to write that story?
Well, several years. I'm never satisfied with my writing, and so a lot of the things that I have, I'm writing on them for several years.
In your book, there are some models for the characters who are actually very special people to you. Who are they?
Well, actually, my sister and my niece, the artist, and I felt very fortunate to have Jane Kurt, who's also a local artist from the Glasgow area, to do the illustrations. And she said, well, do you have any models that we could use, any individuals who would be willing to model for those characters? And I'm like, oh yes, my sister and my niece. And so I was very glad for them to be a part of it. And that made the book even more special to me.
So have you written other books?
I did. I'm constantly writing. I think, my love of reading really is what inspired my interest in writing. I've always been a reader, and even as a child, I couldn't wait to get to the library on Saturday when my family would come to town to go grocery shopping, to head to the library to check out books. And so I've dabbled at writing for many years, and not long after I finished The Iris's Secret, I had an idea for this book called The Flowers on Apple Hill. And it came about from actually a workshop that I was helping to host, and we had someone local to talk about what it was like to come back to Hart County after being away for a few years. And she started her presentation with a comment saying, "From my bedroom window, I can see the lilacs planted there by my great-grandmother, or great-great-grandmother when they came here." And she talked about their experiences coming to this part of Kentucky by wagon. And so immediately as she was making that presentation, this storyline came to be, and it was fun writing The Flowers on Apple Hill and using some of the local history and historic sites and putting that together.
So I've heard that you're writing again. Is that true?
Yes, I am. I have actually written a couple others. One of them that I hope to be able to do something with is, again, based on an experience. I guess I see stories everywhere. And when I was working at Kentucky Down Under several years ago, I was walking up the hill, and I saw one of the park's peacock sitting on top of an old park van, and they were driving out of the park in the van with the peacock sitting on top. And so I went home then and wrote a story about the adventures this peacock may have had. And I've been fortunate to be able to work with an artist in Massachusetts. And this is the character for that book. It's called Crisscross the Peacock. And we really did have a peacock at the park at that time named Crisscross. So it's been fun putting that one together. And I've actually written a couple of others that at some point I hope to do something with them.
Is there a date set for the release of this one about the peacock?
Not yet. But the illustrations are completed, so hopefully we can move forward with it within the next year or so.
Do you have any advice for any of the young people who would like to become authors?
I just say if you enjoy writing, you just never give up on it. I had some people say, well, your writing style, maybe you need to do this or you need to do that, but I just enjoy writing, and I would encourage anyone who has that interest in writing just to keep at it. That was the best advice someone gave to me, is just keep writing.
That is good advice. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. We really look forward to the release of your new book, and I hope you have lots of success with that.
Thank you very much.